The Department of Justice announced a special counsel for Donald Trump-related Mar-a-Lago and January 6 criminal investigations. Attorney General Merrick Garland said in a statement on Friday, based on recent developments, including the former president's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well, I've concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint a special counsel.
Two reports analyzing two different criminal investigations into Trump have reached the conclusion that there is enough evidence to bring charges against him. One probe is examining the former president's actions in Georgia leading up to January 6th, and the other is led by the Justice Department as it explores the mishandling of sensitive government documents at Mar-a-Lago. And so the fact that, Trump is a candidate, I suppose, makes the federal government think there's more, more at stake to investigating him over these things. As to the former, my view has always kind of been, I absolutely hold Trump, responsible for what happened on January 6th, and the proper thing to do in that situation was for him to be impeached and removed from office. He wasn't. That was a kind of acquittal in my view. So I'm not sure why continuing to, explore all of that stuff. Very bad. But at some point it's for voters then. It was for the Senate. They didn't reject him. So then it's for voters to reject him or not. It's not really for law enforcement to kind of tip the scales. Now, the Mar-a-Lago thing might end up being different. We're still kind of trying to understand what happened there, whether to the extent to which sensitive government documents that were not declassified could be taken, even though, he has vast declassifying powers. So I don't know. For so long, the media has promised that, well, this will be the end of Trump. Eventually, he's going to be prosecuted for all these wrongdoings. I've always kind of taken the view that, look, the voters are going to have to reject him if you want him dealt with. And in some sense, they have rejected him. They voted not to elect him president a second time. I think this election was actually a pretty striking rebuke of Trump on many fronts, in that the candidates who most cling to what he wanted lost the most humiliatingly. So that seems to be the direction we're taking with Trump. Now, whether there's some shortcut for law enforcement or the government, we'll see. But I don't have a lot of faith, and I know a lot of Americans don't have faith in the institutions like the FBI, like law enforcement, because there are examples now of really unfair or partisan. These are not impartial organizations. They're not perceived to be that way, and I understand why Americans feel that way. But what's your take?
No, I agree with you, Robby. I just do not understand why this is necessary, especially at this moment when voters are in the midst of repudiating Trump, specifically over destroying his own legacy with his January 6th behavior and his behavior ever since then. I just think that there's just such an error here. A president, a former president, he's not just a person. He is a representation of the votes of the millions and millions and millions of Americans who chose him as the head of the body politic in this country. And the damage that is done to the perception of our democracy with things like this, I just think you can't overstate that. The side that is so obsessed with democracy, this democracy, that, are undermining it, because they are undermining the ability of their political rivals and voters who choose differently than them to have trust in the system, to have trust in the institutions. Obviously no one's above the law. If Trump was accused of killing somebody, you would want law enforcement to step in. But we know what happened on January 6th. We had that whole investigation. We know blow by blow, minute by minute, what he did. We know the failures of his character. We know the failures of his leadership. I totally agree with you. At this point, it is up to the voters to decide. And about the documents at Mar-a-Lago, my gosh, come on, that was Trump clinging on to something that he believed was his, and the toddler that he is in his heart, refusing to give it up because it's mine, right? We know him. We know his character at this point. There's no mysteries, as far as I can tell, that are left that would justify this kind of behavior.
Well, former Speaker of the House Paul Ryan weighed in on Trump's waning popularity when asked what 2024 will look like if Trump's on the ticket.
I don't think he'll win.
He's just unelectable.
I think he's unelectable because that suburban voter, you think he's more popular since the 2008 election with the swing voter in America or less?
No evidence of that at all. But he does seem to have a hold on a good chunk of the Republican Party. Whether or not it's a majority, we'll see.
That's right. But I think he's going to continue to lose altitude because we want to win. And we know with him, we lose. We have a string of losses to prove that point. And there are a lot of really good, capable conservatives who people, I think, like. That are more than capable of not only being good conservatives in office, but can win elections. I was not an ever-Trumper.
You worked with a speaker.
I governed with him, and I'm very proud of those days. I'm proud of the accomplishments of the tax reform, the deregulation of criminal justice reform. I'm really excited about the judges we got on the bench, not just the Supreme Court, but throughout the judiciary. But I am a never-again Trumper. Why? Because I want to win.
At the Republican Jewish Coalition Conference in Las Vegas this weekend, a slew of Republicans signified that they will be moving forward to run in 2024 after Trump's campaign announcement. Some of these names include Trump's UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, Trump's Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu. And on the topic of 2024, Nikki Haley said on Saturday that she's, quote, never lost an election and is looking at a run for president in a, quote, serious way. Here's my thing with this, Robby. I think that the Paul Ryan wing of the Republican Party as it was before Trump kind of took an axe to it, they're desperate to move on from him, not just because of, Trump the man, but I think they are desperate to move on from the insight he brought into the class war in America and the abandonment of the working class. He really put their interests from an economic point of view front and center. And there are those within the Republican coalition who are just desperate to erase that impact. And I think that is the divide you're going to see as 2024 starts to approach, is which candidates are going to take Trump's insight that the working class has been abandoned and forgotten and is desperate for change and run with it, and which ones are going to try to drag the party back to its sort of pre-Trump free market days where it was the donor class that really determined everything as opposed to the voter class.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough observation, though I don't think Paul Ryan's political calculus there is wrong. I think he's correct that there are not enough people in the country who are going to vote for Donald Trump. His observation, there's no way Donald Trump becomes more or better liked among independent swing voters, Democrats, et cetera. He's right. It's not, that ship is only sailing in one direction. So they really do need to find someone else. But the interesting thing is here, look, Nikki Haley, Pompeo, Sununu, perpetual candidate Chris Christie. Look, if you crowd that field the same way you did in that would be the swiftest way to get Trump again, is if you have 13 people up on stage. People really don't want Trump to be the nomination. They should bow out, because it's like, let's be honest with ourselves. It's going to be Trump or it's going to be DeSantis. I find it ludicrous, the idea that one of these other these kind of perpetual, respectable conservative types like Nikki Haley, I don't think there's actually really a constituency for her either. It's going to be DeSantis or it's going to be Trump. Anybody else getting up there, if they really want Trump gone at all costs, they should not run. That's just the reality. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. Obviously, we'll have to see. But do you think, Batya, there's no way? You don't think like Chris Christie has a snowball's chance in hell of being the Republican candidate for president in the next election cycle, do you?
No, I agree with your analysis. The problem is there's no downside to running for president, right? It's sort of a big career boost. And so for a politician who maybe, is ambivalent about whether Trump is the nominee or not, they're sure they're not going to be the nominee. There's very little incentive to bow out.
They're running for cable news contributor deals. That's what they're running for.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And we'll have more Rising right after this.